Yeah, hey guys, so I just realized that the previous video lost its audio, so let's redo this. So what I have here is a JavaScript random background color generator. So you can see whenever I click on this button, you can see the background color of the body changes, and then we get a new RGB value. So if I click, you can see the RGB value changes. And yeah, so we are going to create this using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So let's get started without wasting too much time. So I'm just going to go live with the new project. Then you can see the blank document. So we have a blank HTML template right now. So let's create a div with a class of summary. And then this one will hold another div that has the text background color. You can see there on top. So it's background color. And then now we have a span. A span will be holding the RGB value. So we are going to start with the static RGB value. So RGB 127, 255, 212. So this is the RGB value we are going to start with. 255, 212. The main reason we have the span is because later on, so that we can see the current RGB value, we are going to change just the text content of the span itself. So let's continue. So the next thing we need to do is the button. So you can see, let's create the button. So the button that says click me. So just write button and then click me. All right. So that's it for the summary div. Let's go and create a CSS file. So just call it style.css and then another JavaScript file. So that is script.js. And then let's link this up with the HTML document. So for the CSS, we just write link CSS, and then the style.css will correspond to the style.css file that is there. Then let's link the script. We just write script src, and then this one will be script.js. All right, so let's go to the CSS file. And for starters is that whenever you're working with CSS, you have the predefined CSS values that, for instance, the margin 0, this one removes margin on all elements, the padding of 0, and a box sizing of border box. All right, the next thing you need to do is to style the body. So we'll give it a background color, a default background color that is static, which later on we are going to change using HTML and CSS, now using JavaScript. So I can copy this, paste that. Let's see what color that is. Okay. The next thing you can see is that the text is too close to the edges. So we are going to add a padding of 2 rem. And then we need to place these items in the middle of the page. So we just display this one flex, then flex direction. Now we don't care about the flex direction. So let's do a justify content space between. Now let's do it a center. Let's do the center version. Then you can see everything is okay. So the next thing is that we now target the summary div. Then we want to display it flex in a flex direction of column, so that we can be able to align these items as we wish. And then let's add a gap of 5 pixels. So you can see it is there. It looks a bit nice. So next thing is to style this button. So we are just going to select the button using the button tag. Then we can say a padding of 6 pixels, then 12 pixels, and a background color. Let's do black. Then now let's do a color of white so that it can be visible. Right, and then some border radius, or maybe we can leave it as that. Then we can remove the border and say border none, like that. And then that's it for our HTML and CSS. So let's now focus on JavaScript. So if you go to the JavaScript file, what do we need to do? The first thing we need is to get access to the button that is being clicked. Something else I forgot is to add a cursor of pointer to the button. So we can do here cursor pointer. And then let's do something like the hover effect for the button. So the hover, we say opacity 0.8. So that when you hover over this, you can see now the opacity is changing. So next up, let's go to the script. So in the script, what we need to do is to get access to the button. First things first. So let's do const button is equals to document dot query selector, and then we get the button by its tag because we only have one button. Next thing is the body. This is what we are going to change the colors. So let's do document dot query selector, and then we grab the body. This is what we are going to change the background color. Finally, let's grab the show span. You can say document dot query selector, and then we can grab the span. So here is the span. And then let's give it a class of show. So next thing is to add an event listener to the button whenever it is clicked. So add an event listener, and the event we need to capture is the click event. Then before we add the handle, let's create a function called handle click. So this function is what will handle the click event from the button. So we can say handle click, and then we save that. And then let's alert here and see whether this one is working. We can say hey. So we go back and click. When we get hey, that means the event is being captured as we expect. So the next thing we need to do is to create a function. So let's come here and create another function to generate some random numbers. So you say generate random, and then we want to return a generated random number from 0 to 255. So the RGB values are as follows. So RGB, then we have 0 to 255 number, 0 to 255 number, and 0 to 255 number. So these are the numbers for the RGB. So we just need this function to return a random value from 0 to 255. So how do we do that? So to illustrate that, let me open a node environment here so that I can show you. So what I can do is write math.random. So the math.random function gives us a random value from, let's see. All right. So let's say math.random. So let's see what this returns. So this returns a pseudo random number between 0 and 1. I think it will be exclusive. So this is what it will do. Let's go back to where we were. So we get a random number. So that means it gives us a random number from 0 to 1. So what we can do now is, what if we multiply this by 10? So we can say math.random times 10. So it will give us a random number from 0 to 10. So if we can floor that down, then we can get a whole number. Flowing means to the nearest whole number that is below. So we can say math.floor, then math.random times 10. So by doing this, we can get a random number from 0 to 10. You can see now. So if you just want a random number from 0 to 256, then 255, then you know what we need to do. So what we are going to do is we generate a random number and then multiply it by 256. So this means we'll get a random number from 0 to 256. And then we floor that down, which means we only get the numbers from 0 to 255. Right? And then now we floor this down. So we can say math.floor that. And then when we return that, we can create these three colors. So we can say generate random color. This one will generate a random number from 0 to 255. Let's do the same for the RGB. Then const b, then let's generate still a random value. And then finally, let's create an RGB. RGB is equals to, we use the template literal RGB, and then we start plugging in the values. So we plug in the R, plug in the G, and we plug in the B. All right. And then finally, we change the color of the body by saying body.style dot background color is equals to the RGB. All right. And then let's change the text content for the show, and then RGB. So we said the show is this. This is the show class, this show class, which corresponds to this. So we just want to update the user what RGB random value was generated. And then we save the script and then test it out. Then you can see now everything is working as expected. And that's it, guys. This is what I wanted to show you, but the previous video did not pick the audio. I don't know what happened, but yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about such a tutorial? Did you learn something? And what other tutorial would you like to get from this channel? Thank you.